Well, we've been getting a lot of talk about Superman Legacy and how there might be too many characters. James Gunn has responded to this several times, even talking about cameo porn. But I really do think people are getting a little too excited about this, because when you look at his other work, the casts are huge. Let's take a couple minutes to talk about what James Gunn is doing, why he's casting so many characters, and the reasons why I don't think anybody should be worried. Now, before we do that though, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and ring that bell for all the updates. We do daily Marvel and DC videos, and we want to be your place for all the superhero news, but we're going to bring it to you truthfully and transparently, so you are really in the know. Well, as James Gunn has started to lay out what he's going to do with Superman Legacy, we started to hear a pretty consistent mantra from many people about how large the cast is. James Gunn has grabbed a lot of young talent, and ever since we found out David Cornsweet is going to take up the role of Clark Kent, the names have been coming at us pretty fast and furious, and although it's got a lot of fans excited, there is some worry that this movie will simply be too crowded. Now, Gunn has gone out of his way to respond to fans and try to ease concerns, but I really think everybody should look to his previous work to try to figure out what's going on, and this might ease a little bit of the tension. Now, Gunn is probably most known for his Guardians of the Galaxy series, and honestly, when he kicked that first movie off, it is a great example of how many characters James Gunn typically casts in his films, and why these really aren't cameos, but actual parts, although they don't have to be huge. Now, in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, believe it or not, there's about 20 major roles. And if you sit back and think about it, this matches up pretty well with Superman Legacy because most of them were contained within factions or groups of characters. For example, the Ravagers introduced us to Yondu and Kraglin, along with several minor characters. When we went to Nowhere, we met the Collector, Howard the Duck, and Cosmo. When we went to Xandar, we met Nova Prime, Ramen Day, Darian Saul, and the Broker. Of course, we had Thanos and his minions, which included Thanos, Ronin, the Other, Nebula, and Korath. The Earthbound characters, such as his grandfather and mother, who, although had short scenes, were pretty important. And of course, the 5 Guardian characters, Star-Lord, Groot, Rocket, Drax, and Gamora, totaling over 20 characters right out of the gate. Now, when you compare this faction setup to what's going on in Superman Legacy, it'll start making a lot of sense. Many of Superman's characters are really in groups, and he's already told us what those groups are. We're going to have Kryptonians, we're going to have Earthlings, mostly members of the Daily Planet, we're going to have members of the Justice League, and we're going to have members of the Authority. And each of these groups will be fully fleshed out with characters, although it doesn't mean each and every character will have 20 minutes of screen time. I expect you can look to Guardians of the Galaxy as somewhat of a template to understand what Gunn's doing with all these different names and faces, and the pieces he's putting on the board for future engagements. It's clear to me that Justice League is going to be more than a bit part here, but I don't think they're going to dominate the story. I actually think they'll probably run pretty parallel to how the Nova Corps worked in this first movie, with the Authority playing somewhat of an antagonist, although with good intentions, being completely misguided. You can see how writing the story by moving all these big groups around the board will allow him to build that story that seems to balance that Earth heritage, the Earth characters, with his Kryptonian heritage, all while dealing with the big players in this version of the DC Universe. Now, the movie is supposed to kick off production in January, so I do think we're going to get some more casting news before the movie actually starts to go into production, but I think you're seeing pretty closely what the final cast is going to look like. I still think Brainiac is going to be one of the big villains and Kryptonians from this film, but that is yet to be confirmed. We did talk a little bit about Dave Bautista potentially taking up that role. I linked that down below. You should totally check that video out. We know Gunn likes to work with people he's had great success with before, and Dave Bautista would definitely fall into that category. And for the record, I think Michael Rooker is going to be Perry White. But we're going to have to wait and see.